Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Prime Minister, Ministers, members of Sri Lankan business community and our visiting businessmen from Pakistan, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank the Prime Minister for one of the most enjoyable evenings I had in a long time last night. Partly because, of course, Corona, we never had evenings like that, but it was good to see the cultural show and a really relaxed evening, and not to mention the amount of food that I consumed that I haven't had for a long time. Ladies and gentlemen, my motivation in politics was only one: poverty alleviation. I struggled for way back in almost 25 years ago. I entered politics because I felt that the best way to reduce poverty in our country would be to set up a welfare state. Before entering politics, I had built a cancer hospital in Pakistan. And the only reason to build the hospital was that poor people could not afford the very expensive cancer treatment. So therefore, the idea to have a cancer hospital where a poor person can go in and not worry about the expensive treatment. But during that time when I was building the hospital, I began to realize that in a country of right now 220 million people, the only way you can help the majority of the poor people is if you build a welfare state. And so that was the motivation. And today I must say I had a very good conversation with the President, because I realized that he also was motivated by poverty alleviation. And so the current problem in Pakistan which we face is food inflation. And so we were discussing, how to bring down the prices of food items. And so we came up, he told me how he went to China and he actually visited various farms from where he discovered that how the Chinese how they had reduced the gap between the wholesale and the retail. So previously, and in our country right now, what the farmers produce and what that produce is sold in the retail shops, there's a huge gap. And so the Chinese reduced that gap through technology. And so I must say, I thank the President, because I'm immediately going to go back and bring in technology to reduce this gap. The other way we can reduce poverty is through investment, is through promoting profitability, business. And so that's my second emphasis right now. We have completely changed our policies in Pakistan, which have sadly been there for almost 40 years, where the whole government structure, the bureaucratic structure, evolved such that it was an impediment in the way of investment and the business community. So this whole mindset we have been trying to change in the last 2 years, and removing all the impediments, which translates into the expression ease of doing business. And we have really improved 28 spots. We've come down, our ease of doing business has improved according to the World Bank. And so the whole idea is that we generate wealth, and from that wealth we can then spend on the bottom half of our population and lift them up from poverty, which is actually what China did. And China, I must say, one thing I admire about them is that no country in human history has ever taken out almost 700 million people out of poverty in 30 to 35 years. It's never been done before. And so this is something which, your President and I had a long conversation. And of course, I've been emphasizing since we've come into power. So the reason behind backing our businesses, the business community and investment, the final goal is to alleviate poverty. Create wealth, alleviate poverty. The third thing you need to create wealth in any country is stability, is political stability, is having good relationship with your neighbors. Because one thing which Sri Lanka and we have had in common is that whenever you have conflict or terrorism, as Sri Lanka and Pakistan suffered from, then the first thing that it affects is the business climate, is investment, and in your case, tourism. In Pakistan also, but our tourism, of course, is not as developed as in Sri Lanka. But tourism also gets affected, and of course, Sri Lanka has suffered from. So immediately when I came into power, I approached our neighbor, India, explained to them, to Prime Minister Modi, that the way forward for the subcontinent is for us to resolve our differences through dialogue and then improve our trading relationship and diffuse the tension. I didn't succeed, but I'm optimistic that eventually sense will prevail that the only way we in the subcontinent can get people out of poverty is have trading relationship, improve our trading relationship, live as civilized neighbors like the Europeans live. Germany and France have God knows how many wars they've fought and how many millions have been killed fighting each other. But today it's unthinkable for them to have a conflict because they're so interlinked together because of business. They're so interlinked, the trading ties are so strong, and especially after the European Union, that it's unthinkable that these countries could ever have another war. So similarly, my dream for the subcontinent is that we resolve our difference, and our difference is only one. It's the Kashmir issue. All we want is it to be resolved according to the United Nations Security Council resolution. And this can only be resolved through dialogue. What we've seen in the world in the last 20, 30 years, that when you have conflict between nations, it only breeds more conflicts. A nation goes into war to supposedly to solve one problem, they create 5 other problems after that. You have a war and the US goes into Iraq to finish off supposedly Al-Qaeda, but then you have ISIS in return. So conflicts are no way of solving problems. And I again give the example of China because President Xi specifically spoke to me. He said he also has problems with the neighbors. But all these problems are subservient to trade. Everything is subservient to investment and well-being and business. And so the same thing should apply in the subcontinent. We need to resolve our differences through dialogue, not through conflict. Because eventually, when you do not trade, when these huge, the subcontinent with almost 1.3 billion people, imagine the potential it has. It is one of the biggest markets. And the only thing, in my opinion, keeping it where it is right now, unfortunately, is that our inability to resolve our political differences through dialogue. I also feel that I want to believe that Pakistan can play its part in reducing the rising tensions between the United States and China. Some 50 years back, it was Pakistan which opened up China for the United States. It was Pakistan who organized the meeting between Henry Kissinger and the Chinese. So we hope that we can again play our part. We'd much rather be a country which, rather than becomes part of rivalries between countries, we actually become a country that brings other nations and humanity together. Back to Sri Lanka, we have a relationship that has huge potential for both the countries. From Pakistan point of view, I think the most we can learn from Sri Lanka is in tourism, because you have a much more advanced tourism industry compared to us. Pakistan has enormous potential in tourism, but it's completely, that potential so far is being discovered by local tourism, but not by foreign tourism. Local tourism in Pakistan has exploded. There are not enough hotels, guest houses to accommodate the massive tourism that has gone all over the country, specifically our mountain areas. For those of you who don't know, Pakistan has probably one of the most unique mountain sceneries in the world. Some of the highest peaks out of the 10, 12 peaks, almost half are in Pakistan, and along with the second highest mountain in the world. But it's a virgin territory. And why tourism has exploded in Pakistan? Because of the mobile phone. People go with a mobile phone, take pictures, put it on the Facebook, and that's how tourism has exploded locally. But I have been to a resort in Sri Lanka, and the way Sri Lankan tourism is on a different level to us. So therefore, I brought our tourism minister here, and we would like to have contacts with you in developing resorts in most of our, not just mountain areas. Pakistan also has probably the most undiscovered religious tourism. For people in Sri Lanka, what is of great interest is the Gandhara civilization. The Gandhara Buddhist civilization. North of Islamabad was the center of the Buddhist civilization. And we have discovered various new sites for Buddhist tourists to visit Pakistan. We had a group of South Korean monks coming in who now have shown great interest in a trail where we would make it for the Buddhist community to actually make a trail for them all over where they can visit various shrines. We just recently discovered a 40-feet sleeping Buddha in Pakistan, which is quite unique. So, apart from mountain tourism and religious tourism, we have a coastline, which is where we can, of course, again learn from Sri Lanka, because you have quite advanced beach tourism. Finally, I would like to ask the business community in Sri Lanka to participate in our CPEC project. CPEC is an initiative of the BRI, the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, and it opens the opportunity, as our Commerce Minister just mentioned earlier, that it opens the opportunity of Sri Lankan businesses right up to Central Asia. It gives you an opportunity of connecting from Gwadar, which is the port, right up to Uzbekistan and the Central Asian states. And this is the connectivity which Pakistan offers. Along with, in CPEC, we have these special economic zones which give incentives to businesses to set up industry there. So I invite the Sri Lankan businesses, investors, businessmen. You can come over to Pakistan and we'll be hosting you. Meanwhile, we brought our Pakistan business community, top businessmen here, who will be interacting with you and discussing various ways which would be of mutual benefit to both of us, both the countries. I again thank the Prime Minister for inviting me to Sri Lanka. I extend my invitation to you, Mr. Prime Minister. We look forward to seeing you. And finally, about cricket, I saw the evolution of Sri Lankan cricket team from a non-test playing country into a country that actually won the World Cup in my hometown, Lahore. And I never thought I would see that happen. But the emergence of the Sri Lankan cricket team was actually, for us in the subcontinent, a source of great pride, because it meant that, it was another team which could challenge the best. And yes, the answer about more interaction in sporting relationship, yes, because nothing improves the standard in countries more than when you have countries playing each other in various sports. Number one, cricket, because this is a passion in both the countries. But in Pakistan, our squash teams have been of very high quality, and of course, a hockey team. So we would start our interaction in these areas too. Later on, of course, I'm going to a sports event, so I'll talk more about it there later on. Again, thank you. I want to thank our Ministry of Commerce and our Foreign Office for organizing this event. Thank you.